Hello again, everybody. Barry Hyatt here in Scottsville at the UK Extension Office with my good friend Kelly Burgess.
Hey, Barry.
Who's been having to fly solo here the last couple of months, but we're back at the UK building and happy to be here. And
we are here.
Good to see you again.
I'm so glad that you're here, and it's great to kind of have a little hint of normalcy, even though we're still trying to be cautious about everything and washing our hands extra, especially before we cook.
Most certainly, and afterwards too, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but for sure. But it's a neat time to be back, and of course we're in June now. Of course, one of those fruits that are really popular this time of year, blueberries, right?
Yes, blueberries. We are coming. I love how strawberry season just kind of dissolves right into blueberry season, so you're never at your lack of good berries.
Exactly.
This time of year.
And of course, peaches. We're incorporating peaches today too, aren't we?
Yes, and those actually come into season in Kentucky around mid-June and goes through about mid-August. Sure. So you have a little bit longer on your peaches than your blueberries.
Right.
But you can find both. You should be able to start finding both at your local farmers markets now or in the next couple of weeks.
Most certainly. Well, hey, let's go ahead and get started. We're talking about peach and blueberry gluten-free muffins today, right?
Yes, so gluten-free might be a hot buzz phrase or a hot topic that you've heard a lot of people talking about. So as we kind of put our things together, I'll talk a little bit about what being gluten-free means, who might need to do that, and how that affects our cooking and baking.
Sure, fantastic.
This recipe actually follows a traditional mixing method called the muffin method, which is where we mix our dry ingredients together, and then we mix our wet ingredients together, and then we put our wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. So
makes sense to me.
That's the basic process, and we'll get going. So.
Okay, fantastic. What do we got going as far as the ingredients are concerned?
Yes, we have 3 cups of gluten-free baking mix.
Okay.
We have a ½ cup each of white sugar and brown sugar.
Okay.
We have a tablespoon of baking powder, a pinch of salt, a teaspoon of cinnamon, 3 eggs. We have, let's see, it is a ½ cup of butter. Had to remember what I put there. 1½ cups of skim milk. And then we have some other ingredients for our toppings that I'll talk about in a little while.
Sure, that sounds great.
And of course our produce, can't forget that.
Most certainly, there you go. All right, well, so what are we going to be doing first here, Kelly?
All right, so we are going to start with our biggest quantity ingredient, which is our gluten-free baking mix.
Sure.
And so while I add this, I'll kind of talk a little bit about gluten-free baking. There's several different types of flours that are gluten-free, such as almond flour or coconut flour. You might have seen the whole array of them in the baking aisle. But if you notice, I said this is a mix. So gluten-free baking can be a trial and error process if you're using these individual flours. Because gluten does have certain properties as far as making your recipe have the right texture and flavor. So this is helpful because it's a mix. It already has it combined in the correct ratio. So it was truly a 1-for-1 substitution if you wanted to use that in a regular recipe. But thankfully this recipe called for it, so we didn't have to worry about it. So we'll go ahead and add in our white sugar. And our ½ cup of brown sugar. And yep, that's going to be always a clump because that's how we have to measure it. And then we have a teaspoon of cinnamon, my favorite ingredient. You know,
Janet Johnson, who had done this segment for years, this was always her favorite ingredient too, was cinnamon. So there you go.
Yes.
So you're just like Janet in that regard.
If I make it for myself, I'll add, generally, I like to add additional cinnamon.
And but it smells so great, you know?
I know. If I'm baking for other people, I try and be mindful that maybe not everybody loves it quite as much as I do. But yes, so we'll kind of, Barry, do you want to help me break up some of those brown sugar clumps? I'll let you keep mixing on that while I move on to our wet ingredients.
Most certainly. That'd be great.
As I was saying about gluten-free, just as I'm simply going to just mix these together in this bowl and stir it up. So for gluten-free, there's different types of medical conditions that might require someone to follow or recommend them to follow a gluten-free diet. So those would be celiac disease, which is truly an autoimmune condition where the immune system reacts to gluten, which is a protein found in wheat. We also have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So that is not an autoimmune condition, but it does mean that you might experience some discomfort, gastrointestinal discomfort after you eat gluten. So those people might choose to avoid it, not because of an immune reaction, but just because of discomfort.
Okay.
So one thing is that not everybody needs to follow a gluten-free diet. In fact, if you don't have one of these conditions and you're not following the advice of a medical provider, you might end up leaving out some really important nutrients from your diet. So we never want to eliminate a whole food group without some medical guidance. So that's a little bit of information, but I love this recipe because it's super tasty.
I was going to say, do you not notice? You probably don't even notice the difference.
You really, and I did try this one. You really don't notice the difference. And so if you have company coming to visit, or if you're going to a social event where you know that someone in attendance might need to follow a gluten-free diet, this would be a great recipe that everyone can enjoy without making that person feel like they had to have a special meal just for them.
Prepared for them, sure.
Sure. All right, Barry. Well, I think that I've got my wet mixed. Have you got the
I think so.
brown
I'll tell you what,
sugar
that
mixed
brown
up?
sugar, it really, it's a little bit more difficult than you would think as far as trying to smooth it out, you know?
It is. Well, sometimes when we add the wet in with it, it kind of helps it out a little bit. So
Yeah. Okay. We'll give it a shot and then see.
let's get our wet ingredients added to here. And if you'll notice, I had my butter melted already. I think it hardened up a little bit again when I mixed it with that cold milk. But we don't want to over mix this.
Okay.
So I'm using kind of a folding method where we just kind of cut through the center and turn it over. So we don't want to mix it too terribly much.
Okay.
So
It gets pretty thick there, doesn't it?
It does. It gets very thick very quick. So truly like that muffin batter. So in a way it looks like something that would be not gluten-free. You don't notice a huge difference.
Sure.
But I'll talk a little bit more about our produce items while we get this mixed the rest of the way. I was fascinated to know that one medium peach, so about the size that you would likely find, and a half cup of blueberries both have 40 calories. So the same serving size actually has the same amount of calories. Now, of course, they offer different vitamins and minerals and nutrients. But
did that surprise you they were the same?
It did surprise me they were the same. Most of the time we measure our fruit in a half cup servings, so that's about what that medium peach is. But they don't always have the same amount of calories, depending on what type of fruit it is.
Sure,
so.
most certainly.
All
I would have
right.
thought peaches would have more than blueberries for some reason. I don't know why. I guess I would just think that.
It seems a little bit more of that. I feel like you taste the sweetness a little bit more, a little more of that sugar.
I think you're right, yep.
Okay, well, like I said, we don't want to overmix this too much. So it is just combined, and we're going to fold in our produce items, which is 1 cup of blueberries and 1 cup of diced peaches.
Good deal.
So we've already diced up those peaches, but just a little helpful tip, we do, this recipe calls for peeled peaches. And if you've ever tried to peel peaches before, sometimes that can be a challenge. Kind of like tomatoes, they just have that very soft outer skin.
Yes, and I guess the more ripe the peach, the more difficult it is to try to peel from the perspective of not having the peach disintegrate.
You don't want to crush it, exactly. So what the recommended method is actually to run it under hot water for 30 seconds to a minute, and then immediately put it either in cold water or run it under some cold water, and that should help the skin just slide right off. So
awesome.
Not only will it make you less frustrated, it'll probably save you some time as well.
Make it easier.
Yes. Okay, so we have this. We have folded in our blueberries and our peaches.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and mix up our Streusel topping. Sorry, I thought, what is that word? So I already have a 1/4 cup of that same gluten-free baking mix in here. Sure. We're going to add a 1/2 cup of brown sugar.
More brown sugar.
More brown sugar. And it seems like a lot, but this recipe does make 24 muffins.
Okay.
So it makes a significant amount. So you don't end up with too much of that sugar in each muffin.
Sure.
Per se. And then we have nutmeg and cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon.
Okay, good deal.
So the item I'm going to use here is called a pastry dough blender. You might have seen these before.
I have.
What they're really used for is to cut in the butter. So we want the butter to be those, kind of bind everything together in
So
those little
you didn't want to melt the butter on
pea
this
size.
one.
No, we don't want to melt it because we want it to be kind of that crumbly. If you think about what a streusel topping tends to look like, that's really what we're going for here.
Okay, good deal.
And that's what'll give our muffins that awesome appearance once they are baked, that crumbly, just delectable.
Yeah, kind of crunchy almost.
Yes, a little something fun on top. So
And that doesn't take long at all to do, and you're practically
no,
there
it
right
doesn't.
now, aren't you?
I'm just gonna, you might have to clear the butter off of your blender a couple times in the process, but it's not too hard. You can kind of do it different ways. I did choose, even though it's not that much ingredients, you want to choose a large enough bowl to where it won't slosh out of the side. So I like this one because it's rounded, and since this blender is rounded, it makes it easy just to combine everything.
Most definitely.
We are almost finished.
Wow. This hasn't really taken that long. Lots of times it's just the prep time getting all the ingredients in the right amounts, isn't it?
Yes.
Lots of times.
I think probably cutting up the peaches into those dices took the longest for me. And then of course I didn't mention, but we want to make sure we wash our blueberries and our peaches before we get started.
Sure.
Exactly. Well, what do you think?
I think it looks pretty darn good if you ask me.
All right, well let's go for it. Our next step is just to put it in the muffin pan. So we want to fill it about 2/3 of the way full. And that is...
And you've already greased it.
I've already greased it, yes. And I only have one pan because I figured nobody wanted to watch me spoon out 24 muffins. But like I said, we want to fill it about 2/3 of the way full. And they will bake on 400 in our oven for about 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
The recipe does emphasize that we don't want to overbake. We don't want to overbake these muffins because of that gluten-free mix. It's a little bit finicky with the texture and the everything. So where some baking, it's a little bit easier to make substitutions. With this gluten-free recipe, I would probably recommend sticking as close to the recipe as you can, just because it has been tested. So all of our recipes are research-based and have been tested and sampled. So we know that it works well, just the way that it is.
And of course, this tray that you have right here is 12, so obviously that's why we've got some left over. So she's saying it makes, you said 24.
It makes 24, yes.
So if you've got a big family, boy, this would be a treat and a half, I would think.
It would. They might vanish quicker than you think, which is maybe why why it's made to make several muffins.
Sure, yeah. You know, Kelly, I guess you could always start a side business if you wanted to, couldn't you? Have your own little bakery.
You could. Honestly, it might be my dream for retirement. You never know.
You never know. Yeah, that's exactly
I do enjoy baking, though, and this is such a fun recipe that it's simple enough that you can have kids and other family members get involved. You can have someone help cut up your peaches if that takes too long. But yes, a great recipe. So, as Barry always says, by the magic of TV. These are going to bake for about 20 minutes in a 400-degree oven.
And we are going to show you now the finished product like Kelly was just referring to. And if you want the recipe, it's oh so easy to get. You can get it in a few ways. You can email me at North Central. My email address there is barry.hyatt@nctc.com, or simply go to our website. It's www.nctc.com. We will have the recipe on there as well as the video. And Kelly also has another way.
Yes, you can search Plate It Up Kentucky Proud on Facebook and find this among many other recipes. We actually have a June Plate It Up calendar right now that's available that gives you a recipe of the day. So if there's a day that you get stuck, you don't know what to make, check out that calendar for some inspiration. You can also just type in Plate It Up Kentucky Proud in your Google search bar and find us that way.
Thanks so much, Kelly, for all your help on this, and it's great to see you again.
Yes, good to see you, Barry. Nice to have a little hint of normal.
We are so glad to be back for sure. Thanks, guys, for watching. Take care, and have a great rest of your day.